See it. So we're gonna do some live video here. I thought you'd like to see their abuse. It always ends up with that your wife's a cunt. And so here's their little circle jerk, okay? They're old addicts in our government and arranging things for us. Now you see, Michael can't lift a finger and do basic dishes and things, and they're depriving him of his disability and his services as a disabled person. And you see their healthcare abuse creating disturbances where people aren't in their right mind and creating a legal problem that otherwise wouldn't be, okay? So there's Raping Rick, who's not a husband, and them gathered around in peace and safety on our dime, acting as an illegitimate government, creating disturbances and forming a circle jerk blockade around people, and falsely deploying police and everything else. And so you saw like them displacing us out of our housing under false pretenses, and also after having looted our inheritances and sexually abusing us out, making rape children against our marriage. You see that my husband, Daniel Warren Banks, has been in long-term captivity, a victim of their Lincoln Hills, Copper Lake, Columbia Correctional, child trafficking, tribal. Okay, and his family, Banks, you know that name very well. Okay, so now I'm going to take you where they keep being destructive and preventing us fixing their blight and being able to freely predate around us in the community. And so tomorrow we're gonna discuss their VA fraud, making rape marriages through the VA, taking captives and things, and billing as health care. I don't think that you want the Stephenson, McGraw, O'Brien, Keynes multifamily rape facilities where, like with my cousins Brenda and Deb Lackey, they know that they have addiction issues and they're Apache. Okay? Picking on our families, and basically looting and displacing and pursuing, just like Teresa and them did with Aunt Marilyn's house, her mother's house, with my mother and them, and her daughter Jessica, Joe Riffle Armstrong Meese. It's the same group over and over, repeatedly and repeatedly. That's where your pedophiles, addicts, and everything, and we're supposed to provide welfare. So what they do is they misuse motherhood and tribal, etc., like my mother abusing and Dr. Kane, Officer Jennifer Kane, and that, their little psyop, misusing my grandmother's clinic and making false bipolarism while shacking up with Eric Conway, Mayor, Attorney Bill Brendan, and remember they had the chop shop? So here they all are targeting us and intruding on our business and things, and taking family members captive, looting their inheritance, and peddling among their criminal associates, and making rape children to profiteer too. I thought you'd like to see that. Hi, Donald. And so, yeah, so these social disturbances, they've always been that way, and always will intend to be that way, and that's where all the dead and molested children are, and nobody can conduct their business. And you see, so then they are putting you under your crack and methadone, oxy-addicted relatives that they're supplying, and their drug crisis that they're ongoing, under them in those multi-generational units when nobody wants their drugs. And it should never have to be, and there's nothing productive in it for anyone. And Horst and them, O'Brien, Stephenson, McGraw, Keynes, are Lorna Stephenson, McGraw, Garwood, Clara Stephenson, Barton, Landon, Jim Stephenson, and Nola Stephenson, Airby in Arkansas. They're all relatives. And there's Horst and them with Caravello, Emilio, and Rebecca Bradley, relatives of Andy Height. They're labor and sex trafficking at Monona Terrace and things. And there they sit, basically, Realtor Tim and all them looting us. They're misusing their sex and labor trafficking, taking captives, and they've been destructive everywhere they've been. People keep shutting them down. Them and their Wyandotte, Stephenson, McGraw, O'Brien, Keynes, and their Carter Ferguson in-laws, including Realtor Sherry Carter City Council, whose relatives you see peddling our children in Milwaukee, Chicago, etc., Minnesota too, that they targeted at the school. That's what the community policing is about. Their gang was Sykes and Stephen and Van Blue. Their business is heroin and crack. Okay? And that's my unit. You see my mother and them agreeing to take me captive, to dislodge you from your home and your marriage and things, interrupt state postal clerk and other jobs, and loot everything, put you in that housing, abusing grandma's healthcare center and the treatment centers and everything, to falsely diagnose and to secure us with them and their Ho-Chunk convicted faction. Okay? They've been at it for years on the Wisconsin-Iowa border with Tammy Baldwin's family, etc., etc., and it's an ongoing issue for the tribes and the communities and various states, too. You don't realize they're Sinaloa. Stephenson McGraw, O'Brien Keynes, Alan Rick McGraw, and Ryan Lee McGraw were drug trafficking in Costa Rica. Lorna, Nola, and Clara had motorhome drug operations. They're represented by Mandel and Ginsburg, Lacey Mandel and Poo-Poo Jenny Ginsburg, that you saw safe harboring their rape children and incesting them and collecting service funding under the guises of treating. If you can believe it. It's just completely unbelievable and against a marriage. So they would have no court basis. But then you have Professor Pervert Matthew and Officer Stuart Mosier and their judge father Daniel. And Shelley Gaylord is at this too. That's your child trafficking under false guardianships, letting these criminals and perverts get their hands on your children and set them up on community resources as caring and looting yours so that there's no alternative. Hi, Brian and Butch and Carrie. Yeah. This is exactly what's going on here. So now is Horst O'Brien taking Tony Shepard's pregnant daughter captive and my husband's son Cody and having them go to jail. Their misuse of fraudulent charges and things, false arrests, court deferred and treatment fraud, which is peddling. Yeah. And so I don't think we need Professor Pervert, who was trying to get in at Cornell, Matthew Mosier, teaching them to skirt the law and to go ahead and traffic us and take down our functionality. And I don't think that we need their intrusions any further. But yeah, taking Tony's pregnant daughter captive and having her assaulted by the police and jailed and forcing Tony to work. And the same with others. That's what Krieger and all them were trying to tell you with Fawn O'Brien. We don't need to be rehabilitated to their criminal and drug and pedophilia, racketeering, extortion, non-functional garbage. And we shouldn't be having our system resources harboring them or used by them to secure us in relationships of control and use. And that's exactly what's going on here. And you see that they have a multi-history of that. And together, the addresses and everything show that. And that's what I've been showing you. So then, yeah. And then Horst didn't pay Tony because he had to buy crack. And you saw him shooting at houses. And you saw them using the tribal diamond, our monies, trying to secure and make sexual abuse children, like Jennifer Slater, Judge Slater's relative, and so forth. And, yeah. And then that's what that whole murder thing, it's about control. Okay? And so anyway, then he was leaving that baby on his floor with no coat in the wintertime, Jennifer's baby that they made, on your dime. And one bottle and one diaper for the whole weekend to go terrorize everyone. And that's what you see, the phone calls and everything. And DOC, they're set up, that putting me in that unit after kidnapping me from the VA as Alan Rick McGraw's spouse, that I'm not. Rosalie Carter McGraw Flynn, Dorothy Carter's daughter, Harold Ferguson's sister, Tyrone Adair's aunt, and Sherry Carter's relative. That's them. That was his spouse. And Mosier married and divorced them, and Mosier married my husband and I on my mother's birthday. So, yeah, and they uphold the marriage to this day. But yet they can take your children captive and dictate to you and things, okay? By their unlawful occupy and possession movement. Just like with the casino, etc., that our relatives uplifted them. Veterans and things. Because they stole from Ho-Chunk, their own nation, Menominee, and veterans. Alright? And so, basically, they can extort false rent from CIC that you saw that my grandmother sat on the board of, along with Michael's mother, Madonna Faust Harrison, who you see them abusing her energy services and Head Start proposals, too. Just like Grandma's Healthcare Center, the two halfway houses and that, with Elmer and Father Healy and all the others who are combat veterans. Harry Whitehorse, etc. And then you heard what Arnold the Racketeer, Arnold D. Darnell, and their dependents on Harding Street by Walter and Ulbrich there. Yeah, that were drunks that you see Grandma trying to help. That's Arnie. You see them trashing the Whitehorses saying attributing their filth to Ken, Harry's nephew. Yeah. So you can see what they've contributed. Them and their Wyandottes all along. Arnie Darnell was screw buddies with Wileen McGraw in Florida when Lorna took her along on their motorhome drug runs, and also to see Alan, Rick, and Ryan Lee McGraw returning from Costa Rica. Yeah. And you see them targeting Connie Kubley and Cricket Hustad and others. You see that what they've done to everyone, and we can't afford them. And they don't, and we need to shut down their alternative governing body, and we need to remove their supports, especially their court supports like Mosier letting their associate Sean Strunk out of prison and controlled crime sprees, and Amy Strunk, aka Amy Sherman now. Yeah. Her and April stalking everyone. April Hackwalker, Amaya's grandma. And that's why I showed you Nurse and Linda Benson and all the others. That's why you need to look at that paperwork. They've been an ongoing issue and then being shut down and going to other communities and working us and then coming back at us. Nobody needs that. Okay? So anyway, if they can extort from the County Vet Service Office and CAC, that also, by the way, Darlene Horner, that's why Will Williams' family's under siege. You saw him attacked at the Capitol, and you're seeing the two sides of the same coin. You know, Scotty Walker, Tammy, and all them. Yeah. So we shouldn't be embroiled in their issues, okay, and their upliftment. No. Yeah. And so anyway, Uncle Gene's relative, Wilma Thompson, was tribal council in CAC as well. And Wilma and Grandma and them tried to help them be intact Native and families and things, and they're core morbid, you know? There's just no treating. They intend to continue. This is a way of a life for them, okay? And we can't continue their way of life at our expense and forcing that on us too. So anyway, you can extort from CAC and from the County Vet Service Office and our churches that they've been misusing too. Fawn O'Brien them stole from their church. They embezzled. And you see Capital City Church, Mad City Church, and all them, when they combined, I showed them that they were targeting Jenny Zirkus's family and others. So that way they're consolidating and looting all of our goods, putting us places. That's their works. Yeah. Well, they loot ours and then managing giving us some of our money and some of our things back. It's completely ridiculous. It just makes no sense. But then that Bradley Foundation, I showed you the Koch Foundation, and I showed you them in Chicago and places together. Alright? So now you know by now. So these social disturbances and everything, that they shouldn't be allowed to endanger and be disturbing in the first place. And you see that unit across from DOC, their endless sieges after our relatives died, looting, destroying the home. You saw the beautiful home I put together with no help from anyone. We don't have dependencies, and we shouldn't be subjugated to those that are dependent on our programs and frauding support and extorting support through children. So now, anyway, so after looting us, you saw them making another sexual assault child, securing back their rape children. And that's what all that community policing is about. They then moved in Sykes, and while they're chasing us around trying to harm and putting us once again in the streets, that's where that instability comes from, and they shouldn't be allowed. They need Conrad relatives, Section 8 Tom, Tabitha, and Officer Conrad, and all the rest of them. We need Homeland down here right now. See, we have been under martial law. That's what the Homeland Security Act was. It made martial law official. And they intend to do that to us and their criminals to make good on their looting and their illegal sales and agreements they made for what doesn't belong to them by their alternative governing body. And instead, now, it doesn't matter what you are, the president can deploy and have you taken into military custody. That's why they don't like Trump. That's why they're so against him. But they're the ones, labor and refugee trafficking. And that's why I showed you Andy Height United Refugee, and I showed you Monona Terrace, how they take advantage, in little stalls and everything. And all that. That's what I was trying to show you. Yeah, Andy Heights Caravellos. And that bogus union you see as contractors in Verizon and so forth. You see there Chris Ring and Ken Oddie, Sally and Lori. You see Deputy and Libby Schmidt. You see Deputy K9 Brent Fowler, City Works. And their uncle, Detective Bill Hendrickson, Dane County Sheriff, and his wife, Dr. Linda, who's Red Lake Ojibwe, which is where my grandfather's King Roy name came from. And you see their nurse or daughter infiltrating our King family. And being Roy, going by Roy, and a school cop targeting on the res there. And the shooting, remember that? Their violence and everything is very well known. So yeah, and tomorrow we're going to join you with the VA thing. But I wanted to show you how they moved Sykes in. And that was having her mind that woman with the 5 children, just like them and through my family. We're displacing and having them mind my husband and I's child, Cody Michael King, 4692. That included sexually assaulting him by their Smiths and at Head Start. Barb and General Lucky Coleman Smiths are Garvin, Darnell, Goodbear, Catherine, Ross, and relatives. As is Larry Lemire and Johnny Abeta that Gail's shacking up with, just like my mother is shacking up with Eric Conway, and then taking us captive to enhance their lifestyle. And making rape children with their Wyandotte McGraws that they incest too. And arranging another whole chunk rape child. They've always been together, and that's why I was showing you my mother's phones. And that's why they're not letting them videos come out. Because it clearly shows. And what in the hell are their predators who are supposed to be supervising, and that was my unit across from DOC. What in the hell are Cobo and his ticket court judge doing, targeting our vehicles and getting to work and things and having us arrested for criminals? And what is their perverts and criminals being doing let out of prison with them and the Green Community Services crew? Stephanie, Mary Lynn, A.K. Lynn M., and Jim Green Gorman. And I showed you Pam Gorman and Rick getting picked up under the influence of and bringing their drugs to exchange with Aunt Clara Barton Landon, probably to do a pickup from their pet meds from veterinarian McGraw. And then there's Deputy Anna McGraw too. Dodgeville, Fenimore, Platteville. That's where they're all from. Including the Canes, Citizen Action and all that. So there they all are, assembled again, and they are letting their criminals out with Mosier and Shelley Gaylord, homo, pedo, incest, favor, marriages, and guardianships and surrogacy, misusing their sexuality with Mary Conway and Tammy and all the others, which nobody gives a damn about your sex life. It should have nothing to do in the public venue whatsoever, unless it's pedophilia. So that's how Amaya and all that happened, is Shelley Gaylord and them allowing them, making up mental illnesses and guarding our children to peddle among themselves. That's how that happened with Amaya, Braden, and all the others. This is that damn group again. And they just refuse to give it up. And they've illegally taken over the whole chunk administration and are taking unlawful actions against legitimate authorities, questioning, attributing their crimes, blockading. Yeah, and that's why the blockades need to be removed like our relatives did before. It wasn't so widespread because our relatives were still alive to remove their bastards. You know, so now that they're dead, you see how widespread and how chaotic it's been. So that's what. So now here's the Hyler that Michael recognized as a student teacher and bus driver on Madonna's route with a head start that she started. Michael J. Faust, 12/24/60, and the others marching, getting tear gas, petition, other initiatives that, and it wasn't for their addicts to abuse. You know, it wasn't for their drug support and things. And to use our family members in that. Okay? If we don't, then why should they be allowed to forcibly use us in that? And to come against our working and everything. When you see that Stephenson's and Harold Ferguson's family had construction businesses, and they could have been putting Stephen and Van Blue and all them to work instead of targeting our children and living off Cheryl, Harold Stephen Blue's white hairdresser girlfriend in some prairie that he charmingly put a cast on and was stalking Tony Robinson and the others, and that's where your drug assaults come in and false interventions to procure. And if you don't meet their demands, you see them killing. With law enforcement, they have a legal license to murder. And Koval, MPD, FBI, and his judge, and there's the Green's house across from McCormick Lumber, and there they set up their sex offenders, Hyler and the others, in their house. And there's Hyler holding the clock girl on her porch, and there they are making the phones not run, like I showed you the videos. That's law enforcement. Blacking us out and denying us calling for help, and judges and things denying us legitimate restraining orders when we're in legitimate danger, and you see the danger they are. But now we're criminals and mentally ill and things, so that we don't have any of our protections in that. That's what that whole mental health assault is. And treatment deferred and all that. So you're going from a human being to an object, and then they can loot your goods, secure your children and your home. Yeah. How do you like that one? Imposing their culture on us. Huh. Yeah. That's how it really is. So here, they are holding the clock girl on the porch, and there's MPD stalking me and everything and having raped children, a whole chunk rape child, and in utero police beating by Heimsness, who was in charge of the armory too, and ignoring other legitimate judges in favor of their criminal judges, making bigamist marriages and everything else like Mosier and them. Yeah, and beating you instead. And then, in front of your rape children, they incested and were holding captive. And you see the court orders and custody, that their court thing failed, so they just ignore the other judge and beat you to get the kids' cooperation. See if a cop will murder your mother and she's pregnant with your unborn brother that they made in detainment in their mental health commitment. Of course, the children are going to comply, aren't they? They don't want their mother hurt. They're going to stay away. They're going to do whatever it takes to be safe and to keep their pets, their mother, etc. safe. So this is an ongoing crisis, and that's why their establishment needs to end. It's a repeat, ongoing pattern, and nobody needs that predictive programming and trauma from a bunch of degenerate addicts who should have learned to function by now and had a means to put their family members and things to work. And you see their works against us. Works of degeneracy and horror, filth, pressed wood, moldy, blowing you up, and then you have to get out, and then they'll take your children, right? Because where are you going to go, like June and them said, like my VA here said to me. See that? So you tell Section 8, Tom, Tabitha, and Officer Conrad and their Darnell Garvin Goodbears abusing their Winneshiek Lone Tree and Greengrass family members and appropriating their titles, taking these unlawful actions together, their Sinaloa, and the same with the Green, Decorah, Loretta Patterson, Escobar Perez relatives. You see that? Doing that to White Eagles and to Green Deers and to Thunderclouds. And that's why Gary Thundercloud quit Milwaukee PD, and he didn't want a part of Summer, Janet Decorah Funmaker's daughter, Ashley Amethyst Funmaker's mother, Roxanne Decorah's or Funmaker. That's the only criminal Funmakers. Daughter is Tara Cloud. That's whose stuff you saw scattered here on the CDA truck on a Sunday. And her meth, they have meth operations with Danny, Edwin T. Maria, and Camilla Perez. That's Loretta Patterson's children, Janet Decorah, Funmaker's nephew, and nieces referenced in the Whole Chunk Nation complaint. After their lousy degenerates were hard extracted from the casino they looted and tried to burn down, and lost all their cases, they were shut down. Because anytime they have a place to collect and anybody will harbor them deceiving under poor native people, they're going to start up again. Taking captives, etc., and having a sanctuary to foray out in peace and safety. And paying each other on our dime. Strong arm robbing or handing our resources to them in our systems. See that? And billing you in the courts, too, for their human trafficking. Billing you and billing as health care through the VA, etc. That's what you need to understand about this that's going on. They made illegal Enbridge Hickston, and they're setting up an alternative governing body. That's who targeted Spencer Black, DAV. I was showing you Roy C. Darnell's daughters, Barbara Darnell Goodbear, Catherine Rawson, Arnold D. Darnell, and Gail Darnell, And her Border Patrol Johnny Abeda and his son Jeremy, repeat sex offender of the same child, camped out on Femite 4308 Buckeye, where you saw them extorting Barbara's daughter Audrey Goodbear and her casino supervisor job, leveling assaults with law enforcement on your dime, assaulting her physically, targeting her children, targeting her, depriving her of her license, going at her animal, and going at her sanity. You get it? And Arnie claimed he didn't know his own niece, Audrey Goodbear. He didn't know no President Cleveland. He don't know no Green Dares. He hasn't anything to do with the O'Briens and all them in a long time. And there you see it. And there you see them camped out. Jim Green and Arnold D. Darnell at 2709 Victoria Lane with Marilyn Parker, who's at by Brittingham, Braxton Place Apartments, Community Shares, where Andy Height was camped out. And Art Shigoni was misleading his wife and misusing Community Shares. Ramona Haas, Dennis, the stabber that you're paying for in housing too, Capital Foods. She's Art's screw buddy. She was the stabber at the trailer court, and you see her mother racketeering with Arnold's ex-wife, mother of Michelle L. Darnell. You see really gets her own, with Ken Waldron, Gregory Schmidt. Remember Schmidt's Toto and their Schmidt's Auto and the theft, that's my third vehicle, targeting our vehicles, and Cobalt retaliating and putting tickets in that. Yeah. And their chop shop with Hamburglar Eric Conway. My mother moved in from prison to our house at 3256 Milwaukee Street, 53714. And he committed more crimes and cheated with Tabitha Conrad, went back to prison, and then the next thing you know, they're camped out holding my son in MacArthur and Sun Prairie. Yeah. And there they all are. And then when they were driven out, then they went to Oregon and Cottage Grove and places, and then they blew it up, and then they come back and set up new installations over us on our dime. No contracts with Gorman, Castle Rock, and then we need to look into their MG&E utility fraud and abuse too, including depriving of utilities in the winter illegally, and then fraudulent bills of $1,400. Yeah. 3117 Webb Avenue, and they've done that to Country Lodge in Sun Prairie. Evan Harrison was a victim. Yeah. So there it is. It's all camped out right there. And so there's their sex offenders with the Greens and DOC supervision and MPD, FBI, Koval and them stalking. So I led them right to the clock girl trapped on the porch that Michael recognizes one of the problem families from his route before. And you see it's still ongoing. And so, but when you have them vouching for each other, and forcibly putting people in and forcibly replacing, targeting like DAV, Oscar Myers that Roy Darnell retired from, and Korean War veteran, see that? Targeting Larry Hogger and John Lynch, Nick Emilio, and even murdering them through our health care. Those cholesterol and altering their meds and things. Yeah. And Andy Height is Badger co-chair, EOC, United Refugee Community Block Grant, CDA, and his Caravello Cousins Facilities Management, Monona Terrace, and his cousins at 154 Belmont Street, 53714, Antonia and Dwayne Caravello, and Gloria Caravello, Woodward Lynch Emilio, and Ashley and April Caravello are their daughters they're trafficking, too. You see them in the McGraws right across, Alan Rick McGraw, 4010 Laurie Circle, where you saw William Batley and him sending people money in prison, so welfare money, so that they can get out, buy drugs, plants from Dace Zapps, our neighborhood drug coordinator, Green Chair, and her husband, to set up grow rings and dust with their illicit Badger Care and pet meds for a crisis. You see that? They had the perfect little setup there. Bill Batley was also known as Tony the Tiger. And that's what that detention, what do you mean Melissa might still be there? You don't need to set up a fraud drug home. You're not my husband, didn't have the right to collect a dime or to bill health care, me and the VA and Badger Care and that as health care. And I'm not your spouse, so you don't have the right to do that or to be holding my child and making court demands and assessing me. And especially when our tribal and professional our authorities, who are office holders and title holders, assign us representatives that you see they did and that they disregard. So, there's no protection or relief from that. And the courts, there's no relief from their criminal behavior because their criminals also have our judicare. So the conflict of interest, their criminals performing court crimes on us, fraudulent from the get-go and illegal that they know they can't do, there's no possibility of relief because their criminals also have the funding for that legal representation and pose a conflict. So that's why it's a homeland security and you just need to take them into custody. And our president can do that. You have to say the word, though. That's why petitioning and things. And we tried our citizens' petition of redress to remove their corrupt officials unlawfully governing and thieving and endangering us. And that's why Tammy Baldwin keeps ducking and covering, and that's why Dawn Gardner Paul was so bold, going baddie and la 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 and threats, because she's been long-term with them. Okay? So it doesn't matter party or anything, it's just their infestations working us to attribute to. Alright? And we can't be embroiled in that. And that's the same thing, playing tribal and cultural. They're peddling children and things. And you see Lane McGraw, who needs an assessment by Lane Kano McGraw? And you see him and his drunken, lush wife living off welfare their entire lives, not paying bills or anything, making children and subjugating them to drug assaults and false disability, and giving them fetal alcohol system from their drug and alcohol use, and then feeding them their illicit, including hallucinogen, their cocaine, and now opiates. Plus psychotropics. That's why it's Zombieland, and that's why all this crazy stuff is going on. And that's why they need to be out of our Badger care and our community services. And tribal, they're convicted racketeers. And they pose a danger. Here they are deploying like Ho Chunk PD in places in the community at large. So therefore, you're not allowed to do that. And then hiding behind the tribe and things. And the tribe didn't want anything to do, and they're stuck because you're related, just like my mother. She doesn't represent anything. She was looting and peddling us with Ken Oddie, Sally, Lori, and Chris Ring, Deputy, and Libby Schmidt and that. And here's their sex offenders being supervised by DOC and the cops, holding hostages, and stalking at the Metro bus stop. And you see that we tried with Flanagan and them to get restraining orders because we don't want nothing to do with their lifestyle, but they're going to reach in anyway and take captives and force their way. So that's why you have to go to their governing body and say, hi. No, we don't, they're subjugating us. They don't have any reason or basis for doing that. And they're taking it upon themselves and against legitimate authorities and things. Office holders. They're not elected, they don't hold office, and we don't need any. And then to sit there and say, like Mayor Conway and switching around, like Mayor Soglin when he did that audit showing their criminal behavior, and Mayor Conway's relative Brendan on WEC Energy, just like Cecil, Margaret, and Melissa Garvin. And June is a Garvin by marriage. She's LaCourte relative of Cinda Armstrong Maynard, and my cousin Teresa Armstrong, not the Black Armstrongs, okay, the pastor's family, just like not the Black Green family, the Ho Chunk Green family. Alright, so that you know. And so, yeah, they're more than just coke buddies. Them and Cinda Armstrong's niece Teresa J. Armstrong, 12-12-69, and her half-brother John G. Mongold Connors Armstrong. You see them, Jack, Sean, and Amy Strunk, manufacturing and delivering drugs, etc., etc., child trafficking and welfare fraud, health care. And you see Amy going under the name of Sherman. So now you know what's going on here, and that we don't need that. It's like, it makes me think of something out of Dr. Seuss. Well, what about this candidate then? What about with green eggs and ham? And I said, nope, not even with you, poor dear Sam. And how's Carolyn? Yeah. I mean, they're a screwy bunch. Here, I showed you all their records. I showed you the video. And there they are blacking us out and taking victims, captive taking. And you see the party they had with the caught girl. And then Poo Poo Jenny Chinsberg, who also has the incest sexual assault of my 5-year-old daughter at the time, her in our bigamous rape rental marriage, and shaking their finger and blah blah blah. You low rent cunt. You ain't got a brain in your head, and smashing and looting and everything. Nope, we're gonna have a cunt with you, and making up that new legal status. They're making it a constitutional new status that bypasses a law called a low rent bipolar cunt. It's true. And that's why I asked, who's on that committee? When did this come about? When did this legislation come about? And that's why you have to watch out pervert Mosier that we caught trying to get in at Cornell, and their Rebecca Bradley Foundation, and her Ziegler, her cohort Ziegler, whose sex offender relative was roaming around stalking children. And then you see them getting picked up for their drugs too. That's why I'm showing you these names, these articles. And I saw the variations like Ermelio, Nick Ermelio DAV, and used to shut them down and rescue the victims of Justin and Jason felony incest, luring minors by computer and taking them captive and physically and sexually battering them, etc. Yeah, that's, Richland Center with Pam Gorman and her minister father. Gorman, Gorman Development. Yeah. Nope. That's what you're dealing with here. Yeah, so now they spell it Michael, Richard, and Jim. They made a minister that Gloria married. And here they are, Andy's trying to trot them out as a cute couple. And I asked, well, that depends. Do most of you find felony incest convictions and things adorable too? Because most of us do not. And we don't want that made legal. Why should we have to change anything? The things work. They don't work. Our laws and our structure worked for how long? See, that's the element that changed it, and that's why that element has been an ongoing issue, and they need to be removed and prevented from any further unlawful alternative actions against authorities that they're then and demanding that it stay, and making rape children they incested and assaulting the babies at their Meritor pregnancy care, etc., Planned Parenthood, Journey, Deferred Methadone Clinic, yeah, Rising Sun, CDA thing. No, so that they can attribute to the rape mothers and secure the babies for their control and use and fraudulent support, and also so that they can have continued access and use you again. And that's what they're doing to the young girls and the guys too. That's why the guys murder, etc., because you're going to defend. You're not going to hand over your wife and all that stuff. You're not going to hand over your daughter and that in their demands. So then they're going to take by force. You see that? It's a real Sodom and Gomorrah. So I thought that you should check that out. And then tomorrow we'll cover the VA stuff. And I have 2 duffel bags full of paperwork from Tara Cloud when they dumped off her stuff in the CDA truck on a Sunday, and Brent Fowler and them were trying to harm us right before Thanksgiving Holocausts. On a Sunday in brand new CDA trucks. That's what we're paying them to do. And that's their maintenance, planting drugs, stealing people's other medications out of the CDA and public housing units as maintenance. And now there's city inspection and maintenance too. Just like Hanson and Mays and the